Hey all, Biohack here. Yesterday we had the next round of the Forge Pass with the Righteous set in it. And this, I think, is actually a set that's being a little underrated by the community in general. This set is actually really, really good. So in order to explain why, I actually wanted to go through and talk about all the different sets in the game and how we can compare the different sets in terms of how many stats those sets are giving you to try and kind of create a ranked list of which sets are actually the best, at least with regards to which ones are giving the most stats. And I think some of these results will actually surprise you a lot. To be honest, this is actually a video I made like years ago on my main YouTube account, but it was like before even the Doom Tower was in the game, so there was a ton of sets that were missing, and now we have a lot more sets in the game, and a lot more variety and things like that. And so I think it's really important to understand just how all of these things compare to each other, and I think you'll be surprised at some of the results. In particular, I think you'll be surprised at just how overvalued I think speed sets are in general. But that's kind of cutting ahead. Let's go ahead and jump into the spreadsheet, and we can talk about how we actually do this ranking of all the different sets. All right, so we're on the spreadsheet. I made this a little while back, and I've updated it with all the newest sets, and I want to walk you through it, how it works. So one of the difficulties when comparing all the different sets that exist is how do we compare different stats to each other? Because, obviously the sets give different stats and all that kind of thing. You have percentage stats, flat stats, all that kind of stuff. So what is like the universal sort of metric we can use to actually compare, say, a perception set to a crit rate set? And there's a variety of ways to do this, but the one I use, and the one I think makes a lot of sense, is to essentially look at what kind of stats the set is giving you and look at how many rolls you would have to get on your gear to get the same value from that set. This is something I call like the set to roll ratio, or we could talk about what I would call the max roll equivalent. So what we do here is, in this spreadsheet, what we have is a breakdown of the kinds of different stats that we're looking at. We basically have three different types. We have percentage stats, so that's your crit rate, your crit damage, your speed, accuracy, or no, sorry, not your speed and accuracy, your HP defense, that kind of thing, right? All of your percentage-based stats. And there's no sets that give flat stats other than speed. Actually, no, there's no sets that give flat stats other than accuracy and resistance, which we'll talk about separately. So here we're talking about our main percentage stats. And what's important that you need to know is these different roll values, and the maximum roll any individual substat can get when it's a percentage-based stat is 7. So you could roll a 7% crit damage, 7% HP, you get the idea, right? So 7 is our max possible roll. The next stat we have that we're concerned with is speed. And now speed is a flat stat when you're rolling it on your substats, and it can roll anywhere from 5 to 6 on a 6-star piece. So our max roll is 6, pretty straightforward. Accuracy and resistance can roll anywhere between 10 and 12, and so I use max roll of 12, right? You don't have to use the max roll. You could use the average roll or whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as you're being consistent between all the different sets. It'll change the absolute values, but it won't change how the sets rank. Okay, so that's the first thing, is like, okay, here's our max rolls. And then there's a few other things we need to consider. One of the things we need to consider is speed. Speed is a little tricky because when it comes to sets, the sets give you a percentage bonus, but the roll gives you a flat bonus. And so this is the only time where we have to compare a flat roll to a percentage roll. And that makes things a little tricky because it means that the set to roll ratio and this max roll equivalent is going to change based on the base speed of the champion. So a champion that moves faster is going to get more value out of a set that boosts speed percentage than a champion that moves slower, right? I mean, that's basic stuff, right? The higher the number, the more the percentage of that number is. Okay, so that's why we have base speed here in this spreadsheet. and we can change this number. And if I like put 110, you could see that it will change things like the speed set over here, the numbers, right? Okay. The other thing that comes into play is the Lore of Steel Mastery. Again, this is in a scenario where it won't change the ratio of the sets, meaning like if a set, or it won't change the ranking of the sets. So if a set ranks poorly without Lore of Steel isn't going to make that set rank better, but it does actually widen the gap. So a set that gives you a lot of stats is going to get more value out of the Lore of Steel Mastery than the set that gives you a little stats. So Lore of Steel makes a much bigger impact with Perception gear than with Lethal gear, because Lethal gear only gives you a very small amount of total stats, right? Makes sense, okay? Okay, so that's the main things that you have here. And then from there, we can just do the different calculations. And so what we have is our set to roll ratio. This is how many maximum rolls would you have to get to equal the value of the set. And we can rank all of the sets in the game here. So there's a few notable things I want to point out. First off, crit rate set is terrible. This is because the crit rate set only gives you a 12% bonus. And the max roll we can get on a crit substat is 7. So we don't even get 2 full rolls worth of value out of a crit rate set. So it's in terms of like the standard stats you can farm in dungeons and farm in the campaign, crit rate is pretty bad. HP, defense, attack all have a set to roll ratio of about 2.14. So it's a little bit better than 2 rolls worth of substats to get these values from the HP, defense, attack. Crit damage, better. It's a 20% bonus versus a 15% bonus. So if you're looking at damage dealers, this one is actually pretty good. Interesting, the Fatal set is the same, right? I mean, it makes sense, right? Fatal set gives you 5% plus 15%, crit damage gives you 20%. Like, this should all be pretty straightforward, right? These are all comparable because we're comparing all percentage stats to each other. Other interesting notes, deflection set is also pretty good. It's right in this range with the crit damage set. It's a 2.86 multiplier. Resilience is the same story, where we're getting 2.86. Now, I should point out, like, for a set like Deflection, which is a 4-piece set, we're just dividing everything by 2. So this is the value you get from the 2-piece set. When I originally made this spreadsheet, there were only 2-piece or 4-piece sets. We didn't have the possibility of 3-piece sets, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's why I did it that way, but just keep that in mind, that this is for the 2-piece set. So any 4-piece set we divide by 2. Okay, so other interesting things I think are worth pointing out. The accuracy and resistance set is really good. It's got a 3.3 ratio here on the set value to the substat rolls, which is basically the best of any set you can farm in the game, in terms of like farming dungeons, right? It's not the best set, and we'll talk about that later, but in terms of stuff you can farm in the dungeons, accuracy and resistance give you the most value in terms of stats of any set, which I think is kind of interesting because I feel like people sleep on accuracy a little bit. Like, I've seen so many spreadsheets where people rank the different sets in the game, and they'll give a huge bonus to like a speed set, but a really terrible bonus to an accuracy set. And it's like, if you have a champion that needs accuracy and speed, you are way better off building it in a accuracy set with speed rolls than a speed set with accuracy rolls. Those are not the same thing. And that's what I want to point out next. And that is one of the biggest takeaways from this spreadsheet, is the bonus on the speed set is only 2. Now, this is assuming a base speed of 100. If we have a base speed of 110, it gets a little better. It's 2.2. So maybe you could say it's a little bit better than like the HP, defense, attack sets, but barely. If you have a champion that's 90 speed, I mean, it's awful. It's almost as bad as the crit rate set. And I think this is really good to know because speed stat is so important, right? No one is denying that. Speed is probably the most important stat in the game on your champions. But just because the stat is important doesn't mean that the set is good, because the set is giving you a really, really poor return for investment versus the other sets in the game. And this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier. If you have a champion that is like a debuffer and you want it to move fast and put debuffs on it, accuracy set is going to give you way more value, almost 1.5 times more value than speed set would. So you're way, like I said, way better off rolling accuracy gear with speed rolls than speed rolls with, or speed set with accuracy rolls. And that is true basically anytime you're trying to build a generalist champion, a champion that wants to get a variety of a bunch of different stats, whether they be tanky stats and speed, or tanky stats, speed resistance, tanky stats, speed accuracy, any of that stuff, or even just straight up just tankiness. Speed set is not your go-to set. Now, to be fair, speed set, if you only care about speed, is really important, right? That's why we put so much emphasis on the speed set, because we're thinking about, especially there's a big legacy in the game from when the meta in Arena was very, very speed focused, and whoever went first basically won every time. So a lot of people really, really value speed set, because it used to be the case that like getting the most speed gear with the best rolls was how you won Arena, and that was super important. And so as a holdover from that, people really, really value the speed set, when in the reality is you almost never, like if you had your choice, you would almost never build a champion with speed set unless it was a speed arena booster. You'd always prefer to have another set with speed rolls than a speed set. And that's pretty much universally true, just because the speed set doesn't give you that much value. And I think that's something that's really, really important to know. And when you see other people putting speed as a super highly ranked set, just keep in mind that that is only true if the only stat you care about is speed. If you care about other stats, probably usually it's like accuracy and resistance, go with the accuracy set and the speed rolls. Okay, if you take nothing else from this video, that's the thing I want you to take away. Okay, so we've talked about kind of all the base sets that you get from dungeons, and now we can look at some of the other sets that are in the game. One set that's kind of interesting is Swift Parry. I think people don't appreciate this, just how good Swift Parry is. Of all the sets that you can farm regularly, Swift Parry actually gives you better stats. We're not even talking about the immunity to or like the unkillable portion of its kit. We're just straight up talking about the bonuses. The 12% speed and the 30% crit rate is actually pretty solid on Swift Parry, and it makes it better than any stat you can farm in the dungeons if all you care about is stats. Of course, it has some downsides, like it's a 4-piece set, so you can't say, for example, do Savage plus crit damage like you could with a crit damage set, or Savage plus Cruel, or anything like that. But yeah, anyway, I just thought that's kind of interesting. Swift Parry is not bad for like damage dealing champions that want speed and crit damage. Okay, now we're talking about a really good set, next one on the list. Perception set. We already talked about how accuracy set was amazing. That is basically the best set. Accuracy and resistance, they both give 40. Best set in the game in terms of most stats to value for all the things that you can farm in the dungeon, right? Perception obviously comes from the Forge, and so not from dungeons, but it is an amazing set. And I think everybody knows this, right? Speed and accuracy are super, super important stats. Perception gives both of them, and so it actually gives you a 4.17 bonus, like set to roll ratio, for a champion with a base 100 speed, which is crazy. That's more than twice as good as a speed set. So definitely, focus heavily on perception gear when you're doing your forging, especially if you're, again, looking for generalists. Like if your options are, do I use my charms on resilience gear or do I use my charms on perception? You should choose perception almost every time, because I think it's a much better set. It's really good. Okay, we have other sets in here. Untouchable, which is that one that gives immunity and resistance. It's okay. It's pretty bad, but you don't really take it for the resistance. Other ones in here, like Lethal, is obviously terrible, but you're taking it for the ignore defense, right? It's like Savage set, so it's like it's the best set in the game for nukers, but not because of stats. So it's just worth keeping that in mind. Okay, some other things that I think are kind of interesting, especially since the values on some of these are pretty high, is Perception and Stone Skin, and how much value you get out of these. Now, these are a little tricky because you have different bonuses based on the number of different pieces that you're using. So I can sit here and tell you, okay, a one-piece protection set is really good with a 3.3, but that means, at least until we get the protection accessories, that you don't really get that value, because you have to give up one of your other sets, because you can only have, you have 6 slots and you can only fit 3 2-piece sets at best. You know what I mean? But if you look at the 2-piece protection set, it's actually also still really good. 3.81 multiplier. This one's giving you, I believe, HP and resistance, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it's speed and resistance. I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, it doesn't matter. Anyway, this, this is a really nice 3.81 is better than any of the sets you can farm in the dungeons in terms of the most stats. So worth keeping in mind that protection set might not be great in terms of its buffs, although with the changes in the 9-piece set that's coming out, that's going to be different. But its ability to protect buffs is not amazing, but it gives you a lot of stats. So it's actually a good piece, or a good set just for that. 3-piece is even better at 3.87, but again, you need 3 pieces. So until we get accessories, you're giving up one of the possibilities of another set when you do that, but worth keeping in mind that that's good. And then we just have the rest of the numbers here. The 8-piece is the last one that gives you a bonus once we have all the accessories in the game. It's about a 2.7 value, which is okay, but not amazing. But if you're building 8-piece protection, you're doing it for a reason, right? You're putting it on a Necrit to boost the damage of your nuker or something like that. But anyway, worth keeping in mind that protection sets are pretty good. Stone Skin set is actually really good. This one really surprised me here. 2-piece Stone Skin is huge for set value. You get a 4.48 set to roll ratio for your 2-piece Stone Skin. And this, I think it's giving you 40 resistance and 8 HP. So it's basically like the same 8% HP. It's similar to like Perception kind of, except for you're getting even more percentage stats with Stone Skin than you were for the speed, the 5% speed on Perception. Of course, the issue with the 2-piece Stone Skin is you can't like stack 6 copies of 2-piece Stone Skin, because then you'll have a 6-piece set, not a 2-piece set. So you can't like stack it multiple times. But worth noting that even if you're not going to build a champion in full Stone Skin gear, like just the sets can be pretty good alone, like 1 or 2-piece sets. Actually, Protection is a really interesting one because you get a lot of resistance. You get like 20 resistance just for a 1-piece, which is why it's ranked the same as an accuracy resistance set, because it's basically 1 piece, but it gives you a lot of resistance for it. It gives you half the resistance of the set. So anyway, kind of interesting. So yeah, then we have the full breakdown here. And then Instinct and Defiant are, not really Impulse, whatever. These sets, like they have some stats on them, but that's not really why you're going for them. But the creme de la creme, and the thing that I really want to draw your attention to, and why I mentioned it at the start of this video, is the Righteous set. I feel like people are absolutely sleeping on this set. People know that Perception set is good. They like, you ask anyone, they're gonna be like, Perception set is amazing. Righteous is even better. If you need a champion with resistance and speed, and that's why resistance is not as popular of a stat as accuracy. Accuracy is more important than resistance in most cases. But if you need resistance and speed on a champion, Righteous set alone offers you 5 equivalent max rolls, at least for a champion with 100 speed. If you boost the champion speed up, we're talking about a 110 speed champion, 5.17 multiplier on just the Righteous set. It's so good. Any champion that needs resistance and speed in their build will get more value out of a Righteous gear than anything else in the game. And because Righteous is a 2-piece set, that means it plays really nicely with other pieces in the game. So you want, your reflex, I don't know, maybe you want your reflex, heavy resistance, whatever champion to be your reviver in Hydra, right? Righteous is going to fit in there perfectly because it's that 2-piece set and fits in there, and it gives you absolutely the best value out of any gear in the game, or any set in the game. Also, I think it's worth pointing out that it's a 10% speed on a 2-piece set. So yes, it's not quite technically as good as the speed set. However, since you can forge it in and use charms while you're doing the forging, it can be a really good way to actually pick up some good speed gear that can be the best gear for your speed boosters in arena. So I'll show you some of the stuff that I made with my last set of Righteous gear. Let's see, do I have any of it equipped? I might not. But if I basically forged all of this stuff with speed charms during the last event, and you can see we picked up some nice pieces. Equipped. I picked up some really nice pieces. So we have this one here is 17, another 17, 16. I mean, yeah. I swear I have a triple roll somewhere. Where'd it go? Well, I can't see it right now. But anyway, this stuff can be really, really good just for getting a lot of speed, right? And it can also serve as a stand-in for your speed sets. and then you get all the resistance on top of it. So that was kind of like the main thing I want to talk about in this video. I wanted to draw your attention while we have this current Forge Pass open to get Righteous Gear, because I do think, oh, here it is. Yeah, I rolled a triple speed. I think this is perfect rolls, right? 24 is the highest you can get. Let's go back to the spreadsheet. Yep. 24 is 4 6-star rolls, so it's a perfect piece. This is great for like a speed booster in the arena, right? Obviously quad roll would be better, but triple rolls are still good. But yeah, any champion that needs speed and resistance, Righteous Set is going to be amazing, and it can also be a set for your speed booster. So I think I think people are sleeping on this set a little bit. I think they don't understand just how good it is. I also think people are massively overvaluing Speed Set, which is really only good for champions that only care about speed. And sure, if you get great gear with anything, it can trump the value of a set. Like ultimately, you're trying to get the most stats as possible when you're building this. So if you have an amazing piece in a bad set, it might be better than a mediocre piece in a good set. But when you're talking about comparing something like Righteous to Speed Set, it's going to be real hard to find a piece of gear in Speed Set that's going to be better than even a pretty crappy piece in Righteous Gear for a champion that needs both speed and accuracy. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.